Welcome to Labor Talks, a podcast by NJASAP and for NJASAP that shares important news and information that you consume on your schedule. Labor Talks will tackle vital topics like safety, contract administration, the labor management relationship, and how to navigate life as a NetJets pilot. And we will bring this information to you with the help of experienced union leaders, industry consultants, and subject matter experts. Whether you listen in your car, on the treadmill, or while working on tasks around your home, Labor Talks is a worthy investment of your time and attention. Join your fellow pilots and advocates as Labor Talks. Welcome to Labor Talks. I'm your host, Clare Carey, and with me today is Labor Talks' newest co-host and recently upgraded captain, Dawsen Pietro. Today, we'll be expanding on our previous conversation in Captain Upgrade Part 1. Dawsen, why don't you tell them briefly what we spoke about in Part 1?
Yeah, in Part 1, we dove into the initial training phases of your captain upgrade. So that's starting with charm school, or as NetJets likes to say, as captain upgrade training, which is 2 days over at Bridgeway, and kind of get a more behind the curtain look at how the operations at Bridgeway work, and as well as hear from different departments. And then once you head over to the flight safety side of things, we go into what that would look like if you go into a in-fleet upgrade, where what that track looks like, and then if you're coming from an out-of-fleet upgrade, then what that track looks like as well. So if you didn't give that a listen, hop on over to that episode, then come back and continue on episode 2.
Excellent. Nice plug there. And, before we dive into the content of episode 2, I just want to mention quick about equipment locks. We didn't really talk about that in episode 1. However, if you are listening to these episodes prior to bidding for captain, this is a note for you as it pertains to equipment locks. So if you get the opportunity to upgrade in fleet, you will not accrue another equipment lock. You exist within the equipment lock you currently have. So when you start here, you get a 39-month equipment lock. Say you get your captain upgrade at 24 months, then you still have the remaining 15 months on that equipment lock. At which time, once that's expired, you may bid into another fleet as you so please. However, it is different when you bid to upgrade into another fleet. So what will happen is you'll accrue an additional 39-month lock to whatever remaining block you've had from your initial fleet. So some pros and cons to weigh, definitely, but it's just something to keep in mind prior to bidding. So with that, let's dive into IOE, Initial Operating Experience, which of course comes after flight safety and after company upgrade training, aka charm school. So during IOE, you'll be flying the line with a training captain. It's very similar to the initial equipment IOE that you did when you first started at NetJets. You're flying the line regularly. You have owner legs, you have empty legs. There's just a few caveats as it comes to upgrade. Your footprint will look different depending on whether you're upgrading in fleet or out of fleet. And a helpful tool would be to go into Comply 365, into Crew Resources, Training, and then SJA-SDP. It's the supplemental duty HTML document. Within that, there's a hyperlink to forms, and then an additional hyperlink to pilot IOE form. And there you could kind of see what the training captains have to fill out and get an idea of what you have to accomplish in IOE, as well as the landing requirements. So let's start with an in-fleet upgrade. So from the top of that IOE form, there's aircraft type. And then the next box is your IOE tracks, which could kind of get confusing. But if you're an in-fleet upgrade, you're looking for UPG, which is track 2. So once you've established what track you're on, you'll go down to IOE tracks and just start at track 2 and go all the way across. So you're allotted 5 blocks, which basically means you must perform the duties of a captain within that fleet to proficiency within the 5 allotted blocks. So block 1 and 2, you're allotted 7 landings each. And then block 3 through 5, you're allotted 4 landings each. Now, within block 1, when you go out to IOE, that doesn't mean you have to complete all 7 landings. You just have to complete to proficiency within those 7 landings. And if you don't, you'll go into block 2 and so on. But your training captain will communicate any concerns with you. I've had really great experiences with training captains. Shout out to the Phenom fleet.
That's feral. Shout out.
Very communicative, very helpful. And they seem just very passionate, and they're here for us. They're here to train us and make sure we're all safe and proficient. And then for initial or out of fleet upgrade, you will look for INE on that document. So that's track 1. And then you'll go down to the IOE blocks. So track 1, within block 1 and 2, you have 10 landings each. And then block 3 through 5, 4 landings each.
And as you stated, your training captain will obviously go into this. Usually the first day you guys meet up, you're going to have a 3-hour block for the exterior pre-flight and paperwork, which includes this, and we'll give you a good rundown. Definitely suggest, I did not do this. I did not go in to comply and find out exactly what was going on. I just kind of went off what other people told me, which was still helpful. However, definitely if you want to be on a step above, go into this form, see what you're going to be expected of, and you can kind of go into day 1 and day 2 knowing kind of a good game plan of what you guys can do and just be more efficient with your time, because those 7 landings can go by really fast. I mean, I did mine in 3 days, and it could be as less, obviously. You can have, 5 legs and you're alternating, that's 3 landings in day 1. You can have that. And from my experience, I did the full 7 landings for the first block and then was to proficiency. And after each day, we had a kind of a debrief and just said, hey, you did these things very well. These are the things you need to work on. And when you go into those things the next day, you have, like you said, that fresh mindset of knowing what you want to complete that day. And again, that just kind of sets your mindset for being a captain just in a day in and day out. So shout out the TRs out there, because we appreciate what you're doing, because it's such a good way to set the tone for myself being a captain.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the debrief, because that's definitely something that's well highlighted during training and IOE, but something that sometimes we miss or we brush over real quick while flying day to day. So definitely in your IOE week, yeah, you're with the training captain, but you're the captain now. So
Insert the meme.
yeah, right. So make sure you get that good debrief in. Make sure you're able to step back, self-reflect, mention maybe something you could have done better, something you were proud of or thought you handled very well.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be negative, right?
Right. Oh gosh, could you imagine? That'd be a rough week.
Right, it would be.
But yeah, it's very important to set the tone, in other words. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah, for setting the tone, like we've already kind of mentioned in this episode and last episode, over the course of your NetJets career, you have flown with pilots who have shown you what to do and possibly what not to do. And a good way my training captain put it on day 1 on his, when he introduced everything is, as a first officer, you kind of have your tunnel vision where you're saying, these are my duties, these are my responsibilities. And that's kind of what you're looking at. As you're stepping into a captain role, that tunnel vision widens pretty dramatically. So things inside the airplane, outside the airplane, with the FBO, with weather, with passengers, things that you kind of just trusted with your captain as you were flying as a first officer, that's going to be on you now. And setting the tone is going to set you up for success. So the first rule that kind of sticks is act like a captain both on and off duty. So on duty, what does that include? The normal things, safety and service expectations, delegating tasks, acting as a teammate, even though we know in comply it says these are the PIC's duties and this is the SIC's duties. At the end of the day, we're a team. Sometimes we're going to be trading off some of those responsibilities. And if you set the tone early on in the week, having your first officer know that you're there to help and they're going to also help you, that's just going to improve efficiency and just make the week overall better. I think most of you guys can relate to that. If you've flown with a captain that hasn't really set that standard, it could be a little different and not be as efficient and for you as well as the owners in the back. So setting those delegation of tasks, but also acting as a teammate is super important. Super important. And going on plans and timelines, if you can establish that early, that's going to, again, set the tone for the week. And then the newest thing that I'm, still dealing with as a new captain, and kind of what I was most worried about because I had so little to do with it, was taking account of the maintenance responsibilities and being able to make that tough call of, is this airplane safe or unsafe to fly? Because obviously we have an MEO, we have ways to call maintenance and say, hey, we don't have a write-up for that. But if you think it's affecting safety of the airplane, that's going to be on you as a new captain. So I'm still going through that. That's going to come with time and experience. But like I said, setting the tone early is going to set you up for success later down the line.
Yeah. And also with the maintenance responsibilities, I actually dealt with this on my IOE tour. We were just about to receive our clearance to depart from an untowered airport when we got the engine no dispatch pass and then the no takeoff. And that was it. So how we were configured, just holding short of the runway, there was no other choice but to taxi onto the runway, then taxi off the runway. And we had owners on board. So in addition to taxiing back, having to call maintenance, getting it written up, we had to alert the owners that they would not be departing on our plane at the time that they thought they were. But obviously, owner services already had a recovery in motion. The owners were very understanding. Obviously, safety is of the utmost importance to everyone. But that's sometimes a hard conversation to have. And then in addition to all of that, because we had to taxi onto the runway to taxi off, then we also had to fill out an OIR.
Of course.
So it was a great learning experience.
For sure.
Because too, as first officers, we don't always get those face-to-face hard conversations with the owners. So yeah, a lot was thrown at me in that moment.
Which is good. Right.
Yeah, it's great. That's the whole point, getting that exposure and getting that experience. And then just also understanding the steps that you need to take and everyone at the company that you need to communicate with is very important. So yeah, all of that to keep in mind as you step into this new role. And actually, I think it's quite a good thing to get some sort of maintenance issue while you're
agreed
in Captain IOE.
Sure.
To get that exposure.
But you also said, using the tools to your availability. I mean, even if you think you know the write-up or what that entails, give maintenance a call because they see the whole picture and they could say, oh, hey, we've had 3 of these write-ups just in the past 2 days. Give this a try. And as you know, with the Phenom, a lot of these, are very fixable, where it's just, you shut down the airplane and turn it back on. And sometimes they don't want you even to do that. So it's a good tool just to call. And then, if there is a so-called gray area, then you use your PSE and your captain mindset and say, hey, what is the best call to do? Because sometimes that's going to be all on you and there's not going to be a direct answer.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Another big task that kind of falls under the captain's purview for on-duty captain responsibilities would be international trip planning, especially as it relates to going to Canada. So I don't know about you, Dawson, but I always get into the books when it comes to an international trip.
100%.
Or Canadian ops, just to refresh my memory. In the Phenom, we don't often get to go international. So it's always helpful to refresh. That way you don't miss any steps and you're taking care of yourself and the operation.
A pretty clear memory I had was a captain. I remember him being a 20-year NetJets captain, and we had, a Canada trip that morning. We're at breakfast in the morning, and he says, hey, I'm going to look at these forms for Canada just to refresh my memory. And the first thing was like, oh, you don't remember? It's been, 20 years. But that's what showed that, hey, one, something could have changed recently because things are always changing and there's updates. And 2, it's like, what if you don't know if you're going to remember everything that needs to be done? And if you have if you miss something and your SSE is just interesting in you, then that could get you into trouble later down the line. So I think that was a great role model type activity to do. And yeah, just get back in the books. It's only a few pages. It doesn't take very long. You can do it in the Uber, at breakfast, in the FBO. Just do it before you initiate that flight, and it could save you.
Yeah. And highlighting and bookmarking your documents and
Absolutely.
comply is also so helpful. Like for us, if you're de-icing, if you're using an engine as a power source, we don't have an APU.
We got two APUs.
We got two APUs. Those are all really great ones to have bookmarks. I mean, amongst so many others, those were just the ones that came to the top of my mind. Also, too, crew policy manual is not just for uniform guidelines. There's
it really
so
is. You're
much
so
important information in there. You know, checking IDs,
right, especially with the new
carrying a minor. Like it's very important that you use your resources.
I use the crew policy manual on IOE for IDs. As you know now, we can only use real IDs.
Yep.
And there's some states that I was unaware of this until I pulled out the form. There's I think 4 states, there could be more, don't quote me on this, that don't physically have the star in the corner. Because I got one individual, literally the very first flight I was checking IDs, this gentleman gave me his ID and I was like, I didn't see the star. And I said, oh, is this a real ID? And he goes, yeah, it is. And I had to fill out the form. And this one state had something different than the other, 46 states. And so I was like, wow, look at that. So he had a real ID and it was good to go. But I thought that was really funny.
Be honest, did you start to get like a little like sweaty and nervous in that moment?
100%, because I'm like, I'm not going to tell this guy he doesn't have a real ID. And then I literally was like, my TR said, make sure they're a real ID 5 minutes before I walked into there. So I was like, you know what? He's got my back. And the thing about it, my thought was, okay, I'm going to accept his ID. And then he's going to try to come home, a day later, 2 days later. And that crew's going to tell him, oh, sir, this isn't a real ID. And then he said, well, I was, 2 days ago, I was no problem getting on the plane. And then there's there, and then it goes on me. But definitely look at those manuals that you think are not as helpful, but they can be just like that, But yeah, the sweaty palms thing is real.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about on-duty responsibilities as it comes to captain and whatnot. But I also think what sometimes gets neglected, or what you don't realize in becoming a captain, is the importance of acting like a captain while off duty as well.
Yeah, and off duty, again, setting the tone. You have your pairing before, if you're getting paired up with someone on day one, you're going to have that individual's contact information the day before. Setting the tone as simple as, sending a text saying, hey, looking forward to flying with you. Here's my day tomorrow. Looking forward to meeting up with you, whatever it may be. And just setting that communication straightforward is very important, because I remember getting off my first IOE tour as a first officer and, just getting placed with the normal captain. And I was like, oh, are they going to text me? Do I text them? And it's funny because I literally remember that. And just one simple text that's, friendly or encouraging could really set the tone.
Definitely. But it's so interesting too, because that's another thing that you kind of have to decide. It's technique versus like standard or whatever.
It's not required that you do that.
Yeah. Right. So like, are you going to be the captain who texts the night before? Or are you going to be the captain who texts the morning of? I mean, you just have to figure out what works for you.
Or not at all. You just meet and try to match the picture.
Yeah. And then, I mean, some other things with off duty. So like for me, I am not a breakfast person.
Okay.
And I know
I am.
Right. I feel like most of the seniority list is, and I know like flying, they'll be like, okay, like I'll meet you downstairs for breakfast. And I'm usually, kind of, like as a first officer, I was like, I'm not really a breakfast person. If you don't mind, like I'll see you in the lobby, but like enjoy your meal. So like flying the line now as a captain, I'm more just like, all right, like you enjoy breakfast. Like we'll be in the lobby for a car pickup at this time, or like in the rental car at this time. But those are just little things while off duty that matter and set the tone. And you do kind of get to direct as captain now.
Be honest, you want to spend less time with your fellow employees as you want.
I'm just not a team player.
Right, exactly. No fun, Clare.
Right. How did you know my nickname?
Right. Just heard it.
And then too, like on the other half of the day, like a meeting for dinner. Like
Right.
I always think it's great to get dinner with your paired crew member at least one time in the week.
I agree.
Obviously, it's also like week dependent because sometimes when you're just exhausted, maybe the weather's bad, maybe it's cold, maybe your days have been long, maybe your airplanes have been broken, whatever it may be. Sometimes you're both brain dead by the end of the day and you don't want to have another conversation.
No, it makes sense. Right.
Or sometimes you both want to take a moment together to just like exhale, have a meal, and, maybe not talk shop for a few minutes.
And at the end of the day, it's just, setting that communication up front in the beginning of the week and, making that environment comfortable to be like, hey, I don't want to do this, or I'm just going to, I'm going to go work out and go to bed. And, that's okay. As long as, it's your set that it's just the communication is so important because you don't want, to be avoidant or, set the wrong idea.
Yep.
If you're just clear and concise, setting that tone as the captain is just as important as, being an FO and saying, hey, I don't want to do that.
Right. No, that's so true. And like allowing space both on and off duty for your paired crew member to feel comfortable with speaking up, whether it's safety related or whether it's, hey, thanks so much for inviting me to dinner, but I got to take a break.
Totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are my introverts at?
Obviously not me.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, have you flown since being off ILE? No, right?
No, I start in just a few days, so we'll see how that goes.
Excited? Nervous?
I am excited. It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm actually, again, another small detail is how does the captain and captain operation work? Because obviously every captain you find with is more senior to me. So I understand, some guys do it differently, but for me, I'm like, hey, can I get some more reps in the left seat because I just started in the left seat, and it is a little different. As small as it is a little bit different. So again, back to communication and saying, hey, you can still handle the outside, and you can handle that all week if you don't mind, switching. If you're in the left seat today, can I be in the left seat tomorrow? And just establishing that, which I assure most individuals are totally okay with that, and they're willing to help if that's a concern of yours.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, just making that clear and concise.
Yeah, it's actually, that's such a good thing to bring up. I didn't realize, difficult's not the right word. I didn't realize how, I guess, tricky it would be having the captain on captain pairing, and maybe not for the reasons you think I am going to say.
Okay.
While awaiting my line check, I feel more inclined, obviously, to sit in the left seat. So, but it's easier to go day by day rather than leg by leg.
That fits, yeah.
In my opinion.
100%.
But having that conversation and establishing that, like, hey, on the even days, I'm going to sit in the left seat, and the odd days you will. Or, maybe the first half of the day I sit left seat and the second I sit right, or so on. Having that conversation. But beyond that, like the responsibilities of the aircraft, the interior pre-flight, the exterior pre-flight, communications with the FBO personnel to make sure you're getting the resources that you need. Like you just have to make sure that because you have to make sure you properly delegate those tasks, knowing that you're both captains. That way nothing gets missed. Yeah, nothing gets missed. Yeah, I can't even think of a specific example necessary, but I feel like it was something like, wait, did you get the papers, or did I say I was going to get the papers?
Right. Did you set the fuel panel, or did you say I was going to set the fuel panel? Yeah.
So in that case, I mean, communication is always so important, but with the captain on captain pairings, it is beyond important.
So you can even add that to, your threats in when you're briefing or debriefing. It's like, hey, like you just said, we're both captains and we're used to our responsibilities, but we don't want to miss anything. So having just extra light and concern about it could, just give the extra attention it needs so those tasks do get done.
Yep. Definitely establishing those clear responsibilities is very important.
Right.
So that's exciting.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm looking forward to my line check more just to get it out of the way, but I am excited to fly with other, first officers and, having that difference. Yeah, I think it'll be good for me and, just continue to learn upon flying with other individuals with more experience or less experience. I think it is both very beneficial to someone that's in my shoes as a newly upgraded captain.
Yeah, every day is a learning experience.
Absolutely.
So keep your eyes open, your ears peeled, and take it all in.
Right.
All right, so that's all we have for you on IOE and setting the tone as a captain. But that's not the end of our captain upgrade series.
Got one more.
Yep, so stick around for part 3. As always, thanks for joining us for today's edition of Labor Talks. If you want to learn more about today's episode, have questions or episode ideas, please contact podcast@njasap.com. Stay safe, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Labor Talks. If you haven't already done so, please follow NJASAP on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @NJASAP. Show your support for the union with comments, likes, and shares. If you enjoyed this episode, encourage your fellow NJASAP members to tune in, and please share recommendations for future podcast episodes with us at podcast@njasap.com. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, this is Labor Talks, presented by NJASAP.